trying to keep the comms team away. Okay, we're all good? Okay, well, welcome to this meeting of full council. And just to acknowledge that we have Alex, one of our councillors, on Zoom. And I have 3 apologies at this stage, from Peter Kett, from Evelyn Cook, and from Pania Coote. No other apologies would seem right. Somebody like to move those? Darren, thank you. Leslie, thank you. All those in favour?
Aye.
Carried. Any declarations of interest that we should be aware of? There being none, thank you. We have one public forum from the Anderson Park Charitable Trust. So, Marion, Lynn, and Craig, if you need. Yes, the floor is yours.
Okay. Mr Mayor, Deputy Mayor, councillors, staff, thanks for making time to spend listening to us today. We have a shared responsibility, the council and us at Anderson Park. Yeah, okay. So that's the purpose of, that's the whole ethos of what we do. What we do is what you would like us to do and what we need to do to get this place up and running the way it we'd like it to be. We're interested in working alongside you and staff to get solutions to any issues we raise before you today. Our trust, our goals and visions are in concert with yours, and we want to actively continue to build on the legacy of Sir Robert Anderson and his family, who bequeathed the property to the city for the enjoyment of the people of Invercargill and surrounding districts. We're a registered charity, and I'm not going to read out all of the committee members, but I need to tell you that Tony Ford worked for 40 years for the Alliance Freezing Company. I didn't know. I assumed he was just a line manager, but he wasn't. Anyhow, our activities today, I should apologise in advance of typos. I'm not that hot at typing. Okay, our trust organised an opening in 2022, which I think you will there, Mr Mayor, following the strengthening work of the building. Since 22, we've hosted exhibitions, displays, recitals, and NZO has come twice with their quartet, which has been absolutely wonderful. We've had MASH organising functions, and they've been popular, and some of you I've seen there, like long lunches, high teas, murder mystery nights, Mother's Day lunches, duck shooter lunches, Gatsby oyster ball and wedding. And some people think that MASH are our only contractors. They're not. They get in first. They're quite an innovative company, and when they book months in advance. So that's what happens in competition. You get there first and you book it. Okay, you know all that stuff, don't you? Anyhow, there's been also lots of private functions there, birthdays, corporate events, and so on. We've purchased cafe tables and chairs for the tea rooms. The original ones disappeared, and we don't know where they are, but you guys will know. The drapes have been hung by skilled operators. Joyce organised that, and they're in the downstairs rooms. And the original drapes were removed as well. You're getting the message, I hope. New flooring has been put in, the kitchen, the adjoining hallway, and the side room. The reason we put new flooring in, because the side room had carpet in, and it was a feast for meese. There was hordes of the little blighters coming in, so we had sort of like an invasion that we had to deal with, and we thought we're not having that again. So we went ahead and did that. We're currently exploring the possibility of upgrading the kitchen to a commercial model, and we're using a kitchen designer. We haven't decided anything yet because it's not going to be cheap. The purpose of this work is to bring the kitchen up to modern day standards with facilities which might attract a few more caterers and event organisers. So we hope that that's an outcome should we get to that happy position. I did ring Heritage New Zealand about that because I'm always very conscious of that being a particularly special building. And they said, look, we have no problems you're modernising the inside, it's the facade outside, and you guys will know that. Tried a new outside, didn't we, once? However, over the past 6 years, Anderson House Trust has set up and funded equipment and materials to assist our volunteers to operate safe pest busting in and around the park, and those guys have been quite incredible. We had to activate this project correctly, so we had health and safety plans, high-vis clothing, security arrangements for poisons, and the gas operating equipment, which some parts of our community quite enjoy. Anyhow, our trust organised and funded deep cleaning events twice, and that's quite necessary for that building. We've invested a lot of voluntary time, and we're committed to care for this outstanding asset, and we hope that our actions to date illustrates our determination to improve its use through celebrating the house. Currently, the building's 100 years old, and we're in the process of looking at possible functions to run over this next 12 months. And we would like to think that the council might have some ideas for that, and help cooperate with some innovative and exciting events. Some of the original Anderson family have indicated they would come down for them. However, we've been working with the ICC staff to finalise a lease. You may know about this. We were given a lease which was used for commercial properties. We're not a commercial entity. We're a little charitable trust. There's one particular cause which requires us to maintain the house at a regular temperature throughout the year to stop mildew and damp occurring. Well, we noticed after the house was closed for at least 4 years, there was absolutely no evidence of mildew and damp. And if you've spent any time in that house, or any house, and you know ventilation stops mould and mildew, there's lots of ventilation in that house. It's pretty difficult to heat sometimes. We know it's a cold building, but we've made arrangements, and it's part of the agreement with people that hire it, that they heat the building before people come, so that we're not offering coats and jackets and hats. Okay? It's a priority for us to get that lease document signed. It's almost there, but there are a few clauses that we need sorted, and we'd like them done as soon as possible. It's hampering our movement to do stuff. We can't insure stuff and all the details that go with the lease. Okay, chattels of the house. The house was fully furnished when Anderson Park Art Gallery vacated the house. They took everything, everything that was in the house went, including drapes and light fittings, etc. Furnitures, drapes, and some of which was donated to the house by Invercargill and Southland families, and we constantly get asked, where is all this? Where is the furniture? Where is the original chattels of the house? And we have to say that they're in storage, but people need to know, and there's significant families in Southland who have donated furniture, one such as a former mayor's family. So we would seriously like you to consider helping us get those chattels back where they rightfully belong, in that house, and as well as the Anderson family memorabilia. It should not be anywhere else but in that house. The house does not, as a public building, provide disabled toilet facilities. And that's quite an embarrassment. I'm sorry about the typo there, found it this morning. And it would be an embarrassment to you, because all public buildings need to have access to disability toilets. People are having to go across to the toilets at the pavilion. It's tough enough being disabled without having to traipse across there. It's not ideal, and if you've had the enjoyable experience of using the toilets that are there, they're down a step into a dark place, and there's no rails, and it's quite a hazard getting down the steps. Righto, funding and upgrades. Our trust continues to apply for funding for upgrades. and to assist with the running costs and administration of the house, like heating, power and maintenance. That's minor maintenance. Major maintenance we feel is the landlord's responsibility. Moving forward, Invercargill City has been helping us. There's an updated security system which is absolute heaven to use. You only need to use 4 numbers, and the other one was like getting into MI6. Anyhow, they've changed the switch from the heating which was downstairs in a cold room out the back to inside the house. Very good move. We appreciate that. They've had the heating checked over the last few weeks, and the building has been sprayed for cluster flies. We hope that Bora is on the list too. It's our intention, this is about a coordinator, to employ a coordinator as soon as we've got that lease document signed to the satisfaction of everybody. This is in spirit of cooperation with the city and carrying out our shared responsibilities to have the house open and celebrated much more frequently. The Invercargill City and Anderson Park have shared responsibility to ensure that we get someone capable to run that place on a part-time basis, to do networking and set up diverse, innovative, exciting events there to attract more people to the house. Okay, we've got a lot of talented people in this area in the arts and crafts and performance field, and we want to share those. Okay. Righto. The establishment of the position is expected to take the pressure off our trust members who currently spend hundreds of verifiable hours doing what you have to do to run a voluntary organisation, if any of you've done that. We have to develop codes and protocols for users. There's fire checks, organised work and voluntary help to make sure that the house is open at the weekends whenever possible, and that's not always possible. And any of you who know about voluntary organisations know that volunteers are very, very scarce now at the moment, and that's not a reflection of our organisation, it's common across the board. So this presentation reflects the KPIs which we worked together on with Richard McBar for the building, and our purpose and vision as well. To promote and facilitate the use of Anderson House, its contents, fittings and fixtures is a historically significant building, to ensure that the vision of Anderson family is enacted by organising diverse events. So the reopening of Anderson House has been successful as far as we're concerned, but we'd like it to be more successful, and we will continue to develop in a positive direction. Events are held and inquiries for more of this activity continue. Public visitors and to the region are taking advantage of the access that we can manage at the house and weekends. Maintenance and improvements are being planned and implemented. This has been made possible by our small group of volunteers who remain committed and enthusiastic. It's quite hard to maintain that enthusiasm sometimes. However, to achieve a level of security going forward, it's vital that the employment of a coordinator be implemented to ensure that there's an effective overview of activities and an allocation of volunteers' time. We'd appreciate any cooperation that the city can offer in this respect. So to reiterate the most important points, the lease needs to be signed off to the satisfaction of everyone. The chattels and the family memorabilia needs to be returned to its rightful place, which we think is in Anderson House, and I hope you do too. We are seeking a partnership with ICC to employ a coordinator for Anderson House to ensure that we carry out the vision of Anderson House as we've all agreed to. Thank you for your time.
Yeah, thank you for that presentation. Do you want to have a seat? And I'm sure there'll be some questions. Yeah, before I get to some, hiding in the back there, Rex, is some of this presentation in your area, so lease, potential coordinator, return of the furniture. Do we know where it's stored? Whether that's an option to get it back?
I'll have to investigate the last one.
Yeah, yeah. Okay. Questions, Tom?
Thanks for a very concise report, Marion. That was very helpful. Can you just clarify the situation with the heating? Because that is a concern. I mean, obviously the city owns a building. If the building is unheated, it will be deteriorating, even if it's not obvious. It will over time deteriorate.
Yeah.
So is the building completely unheated at the moment, or?
No, it's not. No, it's not. We've got a diesel heating system which heats radiators throughout the building, and they've just been checked by Falls. But it's quite expensive, and it's necessary, as you know, if you've spent any time in that building. It's blooming cold.
So you're saying that it's used some of the time? Or?
Yeah, we make sure that the heating is on before events happen, at least 3 or 4 hours, more preferably 6, you know, until it accumulates. But if you've seen the drafty places under the doors coming in from outside there, it's not an easy task, and so it's we put supplementary heaters in from time to time if it's really cold, and people have complained about being cold even when the heaters are on. And I know
people can put on coats, but buildings can't, you know,
Yeah,
and
it's
it is a
not-
worry
it's
that
not
over
designed
time
to
they
be
start
hot.
to deteriorate, you know. That.
Yeah.
Anyway, look, thanks very much for that.
Thank you.
Yeah, Darren?
Thanks, Marion. Joyce, Tony. I've got 2 questions. First one is around the chattels and family memorabilia.
Yep.
Do you have a full inventory of what was there beforehand? Because I know that there were a couple of items that belonged to the museum, but have you got a list of stuff that belonged to the house?
There was a volume put together that we have got in our files about that, and and I checked it with Helen McNichol, who was virtually the guru of the house for 20 years, looking after it. So she knew the chattels, she knew who gave them, she knew which room they're in. So yeah, there is the volumes. I've given mine to our secretary, who keeps all our records.
Good. That'll be useful because I've a fair idea of where it's sitting. The second is I'm just looking for a little clarity around seeking a partnership with ICC to employ a coordinator. If I'm reading between the lines, does that mean we pay for it?
No, it doesn't mean that you pay
That's not
for
what the
it,
body
but-
language of the person sitting
Yeah.
behind you just said.
Well, have you tried to get funding for employment from the funding organisations that are around? The Community Trust doesn't fund employment. So we'd like to think it would be a partnership that we would share. But if that's not possible, any solution, and I know there's always a solution, any solution to get that moved forward would be very useful. We know there's 2 people who no longer work for IPAG who are just waiting in the wings and would do a great job, but we don't want to employ 2, but we have to wait till we get the lease and, you know, how things fit together.
Okay, thank you.
Could I just add to that, Mr Mayor?
There you go.
Yeah, sure.
At the end of the day, if you look at all the activities that are going on and will go on, at the end of the day, there's not a lot of revenue there. So the trust doesn't really have an income to speak of, and it does pick up on incidental repairs that it can afford. But to make the next step to get a part-time coordinator, that's a commitment. Once you engage somebody, you have a commitment, and we need to have a clarity of how we fund that person ongoing.
Yeah.
And that is definitely missing from our scheme of things.
Yep.
Thanks, Tony.
Got that. Thank you. Trish?
I have a couple of questions, thank you. First of all, the coordinator. Could you see that as someone remotely employed?
No.
You couldn't.
No, actually, as Tony mentioned, and we're all very conscious of, the security of the building is really important. And in today's modern world, people do some strange things. And if we have a coordinator located in the building for part of the time, and make sure that it's got the oversight that's necessary, that would be the ideal. But I might be old-fashioned. You might have a magical idea of how to do this online.
Well, I just wonder whether it might be a way forward. Have you considered how much it would cost and for how long it would have to be supported? Like, if it was costed, I would imagine we would want it to be work sustainably, to be self-running.
Yeah, absolutely.
Have you got any figures of how many hours or what sort of?
We've got about that much cover that cost. So, and I would hope, like you are implying, that we can get break even with the income from events and commission from sales and all of that stuff once we get up and running.
Because through perhaps one of our funds, we may be able to support it, but it wouldn't be able to be every year
No, I understand
indefinitely.
that, yeah.
But it might be a way perhaps
Seeding
forward
might be useful.
for a part, yeah. But I would suggest, well, it's not for me to say, but the idea of doing it digitally could eliminate some of those hours, do it as a contract type thing.
Okay. Well, if
Possibly.
we get the right coordinator, they will be doing it off-site. You know what
Yep.
conscientious people are like, they
Anyway, just a thought.
Thank you, Trish.
Thank you.
Councillor.
Yes, Freya.
Thank you, Mr Chair. Thanks, Marion, Joyce and Tony. I'm interested in a couple of things and I've got a couple of questions. With the, has the building, to your knowledge, had an assessment for ventilation and mildew specific testing to help?
It's not. There was no evidence of mildew in that.
I realise that, but have you actually had an assessment?
And no, there's been no assessment of that at all.
Right.
And I think it was one of the reasons given for the Anderson House Art Society leaving, but as far as I'm concerned, in the house, it lacks substance. And it's a bit of fake news that's gone off in the distance like a bolting horse. Blooming hard to get back.
Could I just add a little comment here?
Mhm.
I've got a very valuable asset, not worth any money, that my grandfather was a son of RA's, the oldest son, and he wrote a booklet for the family of actually what went on. And I don't think a lot of people really understand how the house was constructed. It was, in my view, it was well before its time in a lot of ways. And originally, and you'll all know where the big fireplaces, well that we used to have to saw the manuka at Hokanui to come down for that. And that there's never been a great deal of heating in there. And I can remember being in that building, but I've never been cold.
Yeah.
So it really is, and I can't think, I'm not going to say what how the walls are built, but I can tell you when I go and read it in the book again sometime to give the right information. But I think that contributes a lot too. There's, even though it's a very high ceiling, there just doesn't seem to be a lot of heat loss.
Okay. My second question is about your events occupation rate to your building. Do you have figures of that, like per annum or even quarterly, how percentage-wise, how much the building's utilised?
I know exactly what it was built of, where everything came from for it to do, so I can provide that for you.
But,
Okay.
but
You might like to read the booklet.
Thank you.
however, we have got criteria around bookings and behaviour, particularly if there's alcohol involved and stuff like that, if that's what you...
I'm just trying to figure out, like I've read through your paper and I've seen all the really great social media advertising for when events are on. I'm trying to figure out your ratio of being busy where the building's open for events as opposed to closed and not.
Yeah, we have to manage
Yeah.
that because we've got a private function sign, but if we're in the building and people are around and there's nothing on, we invite them to come in and have a look. And it's amazing how many local people have not seen in that building.
That's right.
Even carpet layers and flooring, come on.
Would it be something in the future that you would have the ability to start recording that data as to
We definitely-
365 days of the year, how many of those are non-billable
how
for
much,
events?
Yeah, how much
Yeah.
utilisation,
Yeah.
no, that definitely that's part of our responsibility, we believe.
Okay, thank you.
Grant.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor Clark. Thanks for your presentation and your work. It is a great asset for our city. Couple of questions. One on the memorabilia. Why was it not returned? What was your understanding?
Good question. Talk to your
Right,
council
okay.
staff.
So that's in our wheelhouse. And then sort of picking together the conversation around revenue. So you would feel there is revenue opportunity, or there's more
Absolutely.
opportunity to grow the revenue from
There's unlimited, I believe.
People keep asking.
Yeah.
And I can just add a little personal thing about the thing. I had in my possession RA's medals. They call them RA. And I gave them back, and I considered I'd given them to the builder. That was the rest of my family's wish, but they are in storage. They're going to be long.
And they have been authenticated by other people, which is a bit of an insult as well. However, that's life.
And in terms of working with council, what's your time frame on when would you like to get?
Tomorrow.
Right,
Yesterday.
I'm sure Rex
No
and his team can
hurry.
handle that.
But yeah, it would be
If
wonderful.
it's not tomorrow, then when would it be?
Be wonderful to have that lease signed off within the month. That would be wonderful.
But then for the sort of work to be done around the coordinator and
Yeah,
ultimately sort of a decision made on
okay.
whether it's go,
Well,
no
if
go
you can identify somebody we can liaise with, we can work on that
with the.
together.
yeah.
I'm happy, you know, it's a team effort. We're all here for the same reason. We want to see that place buzzing along.
And is your busy period winter time, summertime?
Summertime normally.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
by next summer, if there was something resolved,
Yeah,
that would be a good outcome.
absolutely, yeah. And we know that we have to get a consent to put up a marquee and so on and so forth. And you know, we know the rules, and if we step over the mark, we're pretty soon told. And that's okay, we're grown-ups, we can deal with this.
As long as you've got your vest on.
Steve?
Thanks, Chair. Firstly, just congratulations on the reopening. Loving seeing the events happening out at Anderson Park. I guess just for clarification, I know MASH Catering is leading a bunch of those events. Are they using the kitchen facilities in any capacity, or are they just able to be out there because of their mobile kitchen?
They're using their mobile kitchen sometimes, and often they pre-cook food for something like the long lunch, which Mr. Pottinger might know about. But they make, for high teas and so on, they were making sandwiches in that side room. Well, there's always crumbs going on the floor, so that's why we had to do that. But I need to make it clear that, like I said before, MASH are not the only people. They have saved our butt. They're a wonderful company. They're innovative. They think outside the square, and that's what we like. But there are other people around who'd like to have a suck at their particular serve as well.
Okay, guys, one more, thanks. Mayor? So just
Yeah, sure.
Just adding to that, so how much of a barrier do you think that commercial kitchen is in terms of you being able to create more revenue streams?
I don't know that it's a barrier, because
Okay.
people like MASH, they would work in a tent, you know,
Yes,
they're that committed. But I mean, you talk to people who cater, and we are talking to people who cater, you know, like chefs and so on, and say, well, what's wrong with the kitchen? They say, well, there's no dishwasher and the fridge is out there and the shelves are not open, and it's a bit manky, really. They don't use that word, but
And it would also give us opportunity with it,
yeah,
to the building to be open more.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people go out there and they really all they would like to have is a cup of tea and perhaps a scone.
Yeah.
You know,
Okay.
something
Yeah.
simple,
and we
but we can't do that until we get something.
yeah.
Yeah.
Cool, thank you.
But we're not restricted by regulations of the council. I've talked to them about that. But, you know, we're not doing it because it would be nice to have. We're doing it because it would actually add value to the building and add value to us and the visitors.
Thanks, Steve. Barry?
Yeah, thank you very much for your presentation. It was really good.
Thank you.
I'm like Steve. I'm thinking about the kitchen side of it. What sort of appliances are you thinking? Are you thinking about swapping your appliances on there, or are you-
I've got the plans here.
are you thinking about going to gas, or?
But there's a nice to have, and then there's a Rolls Royce one. But you know, it's got an sterilizer thing, and you know those things.
Yeah,
What you like, and then the stainless steel benches, and the council has put in a new stove. It's a domestic stove. Well, if you're a caterer, you need a little bit more than a
You do.
domestic
Yeah.
stove. So we're thinking of a bigger stove.
Why I'm asking is because I'm a certifying gas fitter,
Yeah.
and I'm quite prepared to give some time.
Really?
To
Can
your
I have that in
trust.
writing?
Yep.
We're all your witnesses. We're your witnesses.
So, yeah,
That would be.
I'll
that would
speak
be
to you later
wonderful.
about
Thank you.
So just one question for me, Marion.
Yes.
You raised the issue about the disability toilet. Do you
Yes.
have other,
Thank you for raising that.
do you have other disability issues around access to the building? Like if you're getting into the more commercial stuff, Are there roadblocks for you around using the building?
There's a ramp up the side, if you've seen it.
Mm.
It's
Yep.
definitely not up to snuff.
No, it's quite
Yep.
skinny.
And if you're on a wheelchair, you've got to go up the ramp, around
Around.
the corner and into a door.
Yeah.
And then if you've got a toilet issue, tough thickies.
You're in trouble,
Turn around and go
yeah.
back again and away down to the pavilion.
Yep.
But that ramp is really not what's expected in today's world. And I know that the council got an architecturally designed extension of that, if you know the building, it's got sort of like a little sun porch there outside, and it carried along to the storage room, which could be a disabled toilet. But Heritage New Zealand said, oh no, and that was to do with the facade. But I'm a member of a club that says there's always a solution, so I think we need to work with the architect, Heritage New Zealand, and you guys to find out a way forward for this, because it's really embarrassing to us and to you.
Yeah. Okay.
So if you're happy, I've had conversations with an architect already, and I'll follow a proper procedure to get you up.
Yeah.
Otherwise, I'll highball.
Any other questions? No, thank you very much for your presentation.
Thank you very much for your questions.
Thank you.
Rex will be out to see you shortly.
Yes.
I can't see him. Okay, team, we've got a request for three major late items, which we just need to accept. The first one, which is in public excluded, is a corporate accommodation update, followed by two that are in public, which was some changes to the bus fares for fees and charges schedule, and finally an annual plan consultation, finalisation of water services delivery plan options.
Can you move your
I'll
mic?
move all
Oh,
those,
sorry.
yeah.
So we've got the three. Somebody would like to move that we accept those.
I'll move all those.
Yep, thank you. Seconder, Darren, that makes it easy. All those in favour?
Aye.
Carried. Okay, we've just got some minutes to work our way through to start with. So we've got the minutes of the council meeting on the 28th of January. Somebody would like to move? Yeah, move it and seconder. Darren, thank you. Any questions in relation to those? Silence there is. All those in favour?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Carried. Minutes of Infrastructure and Projects Committee held on the 4th of February. Grant, thank you. Barry, thank you. Any discussion on those minutes?
There is a
Yeah,
recommendation there just with respect to the permitted liquor tank.
Oh, yes, sorry. Remiss of me, yep. So you're moving that as well, Barry? Yep, thank you. Any discussion on those? No? All those in favour?
Aye.
Carried. Minutes of the Bluff Community Board meeting held on the 10th of February. Grant and Barry, thank you. Any discussion on those minutes? There being none, all those in favour?
Aye.
Carried. Minutes of the Community Wellbeing and Regulatory Committee held on the 11th of February.
Move those,
Thank
including
you
the
very much.
recommendation to council.
Thank you.
Seconded.
Any discussion on the recommendations that go with that? No, there's none. I guess I would flag to the chair that I guess one of the issues around the urban play option, which I know we've discussed, is where we go forward long-term, I guess, and what project we put in which order. And I guess just like to flag that we'd like to, somewhere along the line, consider whether this becomes a priority over the alternative water supply or the art gallery that we're also considering at the same time. So just to give some thought to
Thanks, Mayor.
that.
That's a consideration for council. This is just merely looking for consultation.
Yep, excellent. All right, all those in favour?
Aye.
Carried. Minutes of the Risk and Assurance Committee held on the 18th of February.
Move those.
Thank you, Leslie. Thank you, Darren. And there's a recommendation that goes with it. Oh, sorry, three recommendations that
You
go
sent
with
the
it.
recommendations to council.
Yep, and seconded. Any discussion on the minutes and the recommendations that go with it? No, none. All those in favour?
Aye.
Carried. Moving on now to the fees and charges schedule for consultation. which is item 10. Yes, thank you. The floor is yours, Rhiannon.
Thank you, Chair. So I'll just start by noting some errors in the report and noting that Resolution 3 can be removed and dealt with in that new paper. So first of all, just to note, on page 2 of the report, there's an incorrect reference to 24-25. These are, of course, the fees for next financial year. On page 7 of the report, there is an incorrect inclusion of a Surrey Park grandstand hire fee. That's within the body of the report. And lastly, within the fees and charges schedule itself, a member of the public has just alerted us to some incorrect listings for fees for 24-25 relating to roading and to parking, in particular in the Levin Street building. So that just doesn't change the proposed fee for 25-26. It's just clarifying that the correct fees for 24-25 will be updated in the fees and charges schedule for consultation, and it just notes that those percentages increase are slightly different. They are a little higher than spoken about in the report. So while overall the fee increases are ranged between 5 and 10%, there are specific fee increases that are higher, and that is spoken to in the report. So just noting those corrections before dealing with the items in the fees and charges schedule itself.
Yep.
So just a reminder, each year as part of the annual plan, council is required to consult on the fees and charges schedule, which outlines to the community all of the fees and charges that we charge to the public. The report provides you with the full fees and charges schedule for consultation. It highlights the changes to each area, and then it discusses some aspects in more detail. These are either aspects that have a significant impact on revenue, or they are aspects which council has requested information on in the past, or there are some anomalies also. So I'm happy to take the report as read or
Yep.
speak to those more detailed items as you prefer, Mayor.
So just for those listening, and this is just a process of what we are putting forward for consultation.
Correct.
Thank you. Any questions, councillors? Yeah, Tom.
We have a proposed default increase, if I can put it like that, of 5%, unless there's a reason for it to be different. Basically, it's 5%. And yet in the next paper, we have proposed rates increases, which are looked at on average considerably higher than that. Is there a reason why we did not have a default charges increase the same as the rates increase? And I ask that question on the basis that it would seem to me that as you look through the services, I mean, all of them rely on water to some extent. I mean, you know, if you don't have stormwater, there's nowhere to park, right, underwater. So they use those services, and therefore, you know, what we see is a significant increase, for example, in water charges in the, you know, in this coming year. I would have thought would have reflected back on the service charge. So I guess just repeating the question, why do we not, if we've got 9% in the next paper, why don't we have 9% as a default increase in service charge?
So I'll just speak to water specifically and then pass to Patricia around the 5%. Obviously, the fees and charges process commences with managers looking at what the actual costs are and providing guidance. So you'll see within the body of the report there are many fees changing at a different rate to 5%. Specifically, you'll see the water and sewage fees, which we're proposing will rise in line with the required increases that you've seen come through in the paper around the rates increases. So the reason for those changes is that work around ring fencing and charging those costs. So there are many fees which have changed in a more specific element. The 5% was picked in order to provide a baseline for other fees, and I'll pass to the GM for Finance and Assurance to speak to that in more detail.
Thanks. So the reason that 5% was selected was to do with inflation, because a lot of the charges that are the base charges are services which haven't been affected by water, which have had a significant increase, and are more administrative ones which would have the base inflation. So 5% was used. This is also making sure that we've got the right balance between fees and charges and rates, which over the last 4 years, we've just gone back and done the numbers, is that we're moving to a bit more rates funded than we are fees and charges. So we need to rebalance that as well.
Yeah, so,
Yep, sure, Tom.
I mean, is it not the case, try to put this as a question rather than a comment, but is it not the case, though, that we are trying to move increasingly towards a user pays scenario rather than a cross-subsidy scenario? And effectively, if I look at any of these, I mean, let's just take water, for example, 5% proposed increase. I mean, it seems to me that parking, it seems to me that the general ratepayer is cross-subsidising into the, if the general rate went up by what's proposed, and hopefully it does not, but if it goes up by 9, let's just suppose, and the service charges go up by 5, then you've got a cross-subsidy of one to the other. So and of course, the higher the service charge increase, the lower is the rates increase, because the two have got to add up to the total spend. So I would propose, Mr. Mayor, at some point that we reconsider that point.
Yep. So in light of that, the issue is at what stage do we go out with the recommended 5% on average across the user pay system, or do we come back after we've had the public consultation and actually say we'd like to have a shift away from rates and general rates into user pay or targeted rates or services? I guess you could argue both ways. You could listen to the consultation and make your decision. The other side of it is some people's consultation might change if they knew the rates were going up 10% as opposed to 5%, the feedback they give us. So the ball will be in your hands at the stage. Leslie.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Just a couple of questions of detail on pages 8 and 9 of the report. Can you just clarify where community service card holders fit in the current fare structure? Because the report says those with community services cards would also no longer receive a discount under the option 1. But where in the current fare structure do they fit? Because they're not actually listed there. So where's the community service card?
Through you, Chair.
Discount there?
If it's all right, Councillor, if we can deal with that in the amended paper, because that item speaks to that, if that's okay.
Okay. And the next one on the next page for the pools. The diagrams, the child participation versus entry fee, and then the child under 7 participation versus entry fee.
So those are, through yourself, Chair, those are young children and then young people up to 18. So when we reference under 7, that's the ones under 7, and then the other ones include up to 18, so 7 to 18.
So the first one is including up to 18. The second one is specifically for under 7s.
The first one, where it says child participation, that is 7 to 18, and then where it says combined, that's all of them.
Thank you.
Yeah, Trish.
Are the numbers for participation at the pool, do they count for the school swimming?
I believe they do, yes.
Thank you.
Any further questions? Come back to your issue, Tom, about whether it'll be your recommendation that we adjust those rates to a higher percentage, be it 9, 9.5 or 10, or whether we leave it for the consultation period.
Well, I mean, I don't know if I'm able to, but if I'm able to, I would move, Chair, that we do have that as a proposal, that the default increase should be the rate of rates, general rates increase, including water, rather than the 5% that's included in the paper. I mean, would that be free to move that?
Yeah, Rhiannon, yeah, I'll come to you in a minute, Patricia.
So just to clarify, just to make sure that it is really clear, there are significant increases in the water and sewage fees for the volume charges for commercial users at the plants. So those water fees are reflecting the bulk of where that cost increase needs to be applied. In terms of the question as to whether across those other areas you would like to move to 10%, that is possible. It would require quite a lot of work, rework ahead of consultation, and then there may also be cases where it's not appropriate because that would bring it up above our policy, which is recovery of costs, and we would actually be recovering more. So that's quite a lot of detailed work. I understand that there's been conversations and discussions that we are likely to review fees and charges again before the next financial year anyway, because of work in specific areas where more detailed work on that revenue forecasting is required. So those are really the options in front of us. It certainly would be challenging to achieve that work on a 10% increase across all those areas by the 11th of March.
Hopefully the general rates increase and it'll be 10%, it might be lower than that, but whatever the number is, my proposal remains, Chair. I mean, I can see it being quite a lot of work, but I can see it being sort of a day with somebody with a calculator. I don't think we're talking about months. So
Yep.
my proposal, Chair, would be that...
I've got that,
Sorry?
Patricia. I've got that.
And in addition to what Rhiannon has just gone through, the other aspect that we need to consider is that many of our fees and charges are benchmarked against both other councils and other service providers in the area. So if we were to put up our fees and charges by the rate of our general rates increase, would actually hit participation. And the graphs in which you had for the Splash Palace child fees, those are proposed to go down, if I remember correctly, in order to get more people swimming, which gives us more revenue. So we could put the fees and charges up and actually have a perverse outcome that would give us less revenue and a more of an impost on general ratepayers. So it's the supply and demand curve that we have to work with here. So you can actually price yourself out of participation in some things.
Okay. I mean, I would still like to move that, Chair. I mean,
Yep, I've got that.
reasons why it can't be done.
Yep,
but
I've got that. I'm just going to allow a little bit more contribution. Grant.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. So a couple of things. Just want to unpick the participation or the correlation or the implied correlation between fees going up and age. You know, I think all of us would know that once kids get a bit older, they get a bit more conscious, and so there is a drop-off and naturally around them wanting to go swimming and those sorts of things. So are we absolutely sure that that data is accurate around it is because of fees, or is it or could it be because of other reasons not related to cost?
So through yourself, Chair, that data shows the correlation. The analysis provided is from the manager of that activity, and it's their assessment of that data. I'll pass to the GM of that group if he wishes to add anything further, if he has further information.
Through you, Mayor Clark. The analysis is done based on the data provided. And I've really pushed all of our managers to consider the fees on a total revenue basis, not on a percentage increase basis. So, as an example, looking at some of the use of our facilities or other services, if we are to increase the fee by a percentage, what does that impact have on our total revenue? Similarly, and that's why I'm really struggling to understand how, because this isn't a science, it's actually an art of working this out in relation to price elasticity on demand. And the impact of an across-the-board increase in fees, I will challenge whether that provides the outcome that you are looking for, if that is what you decide to do. Because the work that needs to be done has still not been done in the overall total assessment of total revenue that we are trying to gain. And that can't be worked out, in my view, in my professional opinion, on just putting a percentage increase across the board.
Yeah, it probably still leaves open around the validness of that data around, you know, other reasons, and I appreciate elasticity of demand and all that good stuff, but the reality is that there's some other factors I believe would be playing into why kids stop going swimming at a certain age. Anyway, we'll leave that. The second thing, and it's a bit to Tom's proposal, is, you know, the way to perhaps to do that would be to do not less than. So those fees and charges may rise at a minimum of the rates increase, but as you've highlighted with some other charges, like of the water, they may be more because there's more impact on the direct impact of that use relative to the, you know, the cost of the resource. So that may be a way to...
Clarification, sure, that's actually what I meant.
Right, okay.
And I didn't ever say it very clearly. I meant
not less than rates,
Yep. So, a question for you, Rex, from me. Is it reasonable if a person was taking somebody to Splash Palace at $4 an entry and the rate becomes $4.40 as opposed to $4, do you think there's much of a turn away because of the extra 40 cents?
Or would that... I'm not the user of the service.
Yeah, but Patricia suggested to us that potentially if you push the rates too high, you lose participation. You can take out some people who may just say it's too expensive and drop away. Of course, what you lose on the other side of the equation, I guess, is that the majority would still go and will pay a bit more, which helps our bottom line, I guess, because revenues is just one of the forms of sources of income over and above rates.
Like I say, I mean, the analysis needs to be done, and it's not done to that level of detail just yet.
Yeah.
But I think we're on a maturity journey that will allow us to get that work, which is a challenge I've put to the areas of this transactional delivery of service that sits within community spaces and places area.
Yep, okay. Leslie.
For instance, if you look at that child participation rate, it would appear that the child under 7 participation rate by the graph shows that if you have the free entry for the parent who goes with that age of child, the participation rate has actually stayed much higher. When you're talking about the older age group from 7 to 18 in the other graph, the participation has slipped.
Yeah.
So the free entry for the parent for the under 7
Yep.
is a valuable part of participation rate actually having stayed quite high for that group.
Yep.
So there's a lot of nuances
but that's a requirement.
that are not...
You can't swim at the pool unless you've got an adult with you if you're under 7, can you?
Yeah, and it's kept the participation rate for that group high. But there's a lot of it's just a demonstration of the nuances that are in
Yep,
here.
I understand that.
That aren't as simple as saying we'll just put on a percentage that's the rate increase. It would concern me to have that as a blanket.
I guess what Tom was saying, Tom, you correct me if I've got this wrong, but I guess what you were saying is that there are some increases that apply or are being suggested, but that they are actually too low. They're at 5% when the suggested figure for the rate increase, which is another source of revenue, is 9.5. And why aren't we being consistent across the board on our general rates, which is 9.5, as opposed to a user pay fee?
I mean, it's clear
surcharge?
that 5% is a round number. It's not chosen because of any particularly scientific evidence that that's a critical factor. The basis of my argument would be that by having a general rates increase higher than the service charge increase, we are increasing the level of cross-subsidisation between,
Sure.
frankly, the poor and the rich. So I would maintain my argument that it should be at least the level of the general rates increase, maybe higher, depending on the circumstances, but it should be at least at that level, including water.
Trish?
I'd like to speak against your motion, Tom. I'm thinking, for example, of the elderly housing. So if we put that up according to the rates, it's quite a big jump for them. That's just one example. I think there are many, even if it was nine, whatever the figure is, overall, I still think there'll be too much of an increase. We have to think about the community that we serve as well, and we have to be. I know we can't give everything, but we do need to be very thoughtful about what we do with these increases. And I think rates increase across the board would be too severe.
Yep. So
It's just my
I'll
thought.
just make one reflection on that, Trish. Last time we significantly pushed the elderly care rental up, there was a human outcry, a very strong one. But what we found out was that most of the people, if not nearly all of them, were actually below the ceiling for getting accommodation supplemented at work and income. So what that basically meant is we put the rents up $30, but the clients only paid $3. The other 27 came in on accommodation supplement, and I think our current rates are still well below.
Right.
But these are subtleties that
Yep.
I'll gauge the feeling shortly. Tom, just got Patricia and Michael want to contribute. Michael.
Yeah, thank you through yourself, Mayor Clark. I'd just like to highlight to Council a couple of items in relation to the fees versus rates discussion. Cost of service is an interesting one that you need to reflect on in relation to that, in that you can't collect more, in most areas you can't collect more fees than you actually have of cost of service. So that has to be taken into account. Council also has a revenue policy in relation to the target fees versus rates equation for each of the different types of services. It would be fair to say, looking at some of them, that we need to do a review as a council. I would suggest that you would be looking at that at a 6-month window. It is quite a piece of work, as you've heard from one of my GMs in relation to that, and the work is underway. But trying to get that before you go out for consultation is probably a bridge too far in relation to that. If you were to set it at what you've got currently in the recommendation, it would be contra to some of those that we've already heard, in the example being the pools. As an example, you would be potentially negatively impacting your revenue while increasing a fee. It can have the flip side effect, and that's what we need to work through with science, with all of the different fee types, to make sure that we're actually maximising the revenue to lower the impact on rates across all of those areas. So we do bring the balance that the Deputy Mayor has indicated back into those, in line with the council policies.
Patricia.
Through you, Mayor, I was just actually going to reiterate some of the points that Michael had said, but it's also the time that we have. We're looking to putting the consultation document back to you for the 11th of March. Brandon will wave her hands if I've got that wrong. With consultation going out that same week. So it's actually the amount of work required to change the level of fees at this late stage would put that consultation period in doubt.
Before I come back to you, Tom, I guess I'll just reflect that if we have increasing costs for council and we don't look to fees and charges and we don't have alternative income, then we have to have rates. And so that's the tension we face. Tom, this has got to be a little bit of a complex area, and I'm not sure how you'd word a motion, but before we do that, because the wording of the motion will need some subtlety within it, it might help if we go around the table and just have a quick straw poll to see whether there is some appetite to an increase higher than what's already in the schedule of rates. If there's not, then I won't go down that track, and you can revisit when we have the consultation. If there is, then we'll have to get the wording very careful and accept that there's a time frame lag from what Michael and some of the other senior staff are saying. Sorry, Steve?
No, like I'm just nervous about a straw poll because for me it's so nuanced, right? We've already spoken about a potential, a tipping point that's going to impact participation and affect also our community differently based on how much those rise. So I'm nervous about just a standard number, even if that's a minimum.
No,
It's too nuanced.
I wasn't going to gauge that.
Okay.
What I'm suggesting is that this is going to be a very nuanced recommendation if we put it up from Tom and whoever seconds it. That will take some work in the next 5-10 minutes. And it's no good doing that if a majority just don't want to go down that track. They just want to leave it the way it is, given that the advice we've been given by staff that this is not a quick fix to review it. It will take some time because there are subtle changes all over the place.
Do you want to start on this side of the table then?
Yes.
Hey?
You want to start over here then?
Yeah.
You're going around. I'm not supportive of altering it. Not all fees are created equal.
Yeah.
But there is the opportunity, if in the interim, during that period of consultation, for a submission to be made on the process.
Okay.
So I'm not supporting a change from what's proposed.
Alan?
Well, I'm sort of too much to understand exactly where Tom's coming from. In a commercial world, that makes total sense as to what Tom's saying. But what I'm also hearing is that what Michael's saying is that there needs to be an actual council policy change if you're going to do that. So I guess I would be quite positive about discussing that policy change so that the council can perhaps look at doing that in the future.
Okay. Ria?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'm also not in favour of Councillor Campbell's motion, and there's a reason for that. Similar to what Trish said about the elderly housing, I know that the accommodation supplement helps inflate what they're getting, but our elderly are actually bleeding already. They're going to food banks, they're really struggling, our community's struggling, and we need to learn how to trim our fat too. So at this time, listen to Michael looking at how to reset that policy. I think I'm in favour of sticking with what we've got, and then looking forward, making changes in the next 6 months that we can in the submission process.
Yeah, Rangi?
No.
Thank you. Grant?
Yeah, I think I'm supportive of it in the sense that it gives a good discipline around the decision making around how we set fees and charges.
Sure.
So, yeah, I'm supportive.
Yep, Trish?
No.
Okay, Steve?
No, not at the moment.
Okay, Tom, obviously yes. Barry? No. Leslie?
No, there are just too many nuances in it,
Yep.
and we've been given another pathway that is far more measured
Yep.
for council to take.
Yep, and I'm in favour, but that's okay. It's no good going down this track if we don't have the numbers. So something to consider at consultation time as well. And maybe seek some sort of development from Michael and his team going forward, so that we don't revisit this a year from now. Well, I won't have to, but the rest of you don't have to revisit. Thank you for that. Okay, where do we get to, Michael? Okay, so we've got two resolutions. One that yep, thank you. Leslie, yep, quickest. Any further discussion on those? No, all those in favour?
Sorry, what we voting on?
Oh, sorry, just the two resolutions there, that we receive the report and that we adopt the fees and charges schedule for the consultation process. That doesn't lock us in, because we can still make decisions after we hear the consultation.
Yeah.
So I vote against.
That's all right. I'd say all those in favour?
Aye.
There are clearly some against. Tom, anybody else? I am as well. And so I'll have that recorded. Tom?
Yes, please.
Thank you. Two records against. Motions are carried. Thank you. All right, moving on to the annual plan budget adjustment for decision. So just before you start, Rhiannon and Patricia, I just want to signal that I don't agree with the process we're using here. I've signalled that with my colleagues to date, so I've written to you about it. I haven't written to staff about it. So I don't agree with an 8.5% or 9.5% increase, and I don't agree with going through line by line and chipping away at small amounts of cost. And so I'm going to be opposed to all of it today, but I will chair and allow others to make decisions. But I just want to signal for the record that I'm opposed and that I will be strong in advocating for a 3.9% increase in rates this coming year. Okie dokie, the floor is yours, Rhiannon.
Thank you, Chair. I'll just note within this paper there is an item relating to the public excluded paper.
Yes.
So that item would need to be discussed before this paper can be fully finalised. So just flagging that before I start. So having heard what you've said, Chair, I'll just seek your guidance in how you would like to work through the report. Do you want me to work through the recommendations in sections, given the items for discussion?
Yeah, I think that's fine.
Yep.
I mean, again, I don't agree with the public excluded. I think when we start talking about organisational potential, for want of better words, which is a sensitive issue at this time of the year, that should be open, because putting it in PE, in my view, excludes it from public consultation. So I'm nervous about that we're not discussing things like employee costs. So I'll keep my powder dry on that one. I'll allow the process to work its way through, and I'll use my ability in the media to say what I need to say publicly. So you're welcome to go through your report. I think that's a good way forward.
Okay, so thank you, Chair. So just starting with that summary background, the annual plan for 25-26 is the second year of the long-term plan. What we are required to do for the annual plan process is describe variances to the long-term plan and communicate those with the public. And where any specific variances are significant in and of themselves, consult on those items in addition. So this report deals with all of the variances related to the annual plan. And just to be really clear from the beginning, the consultation that's proposed is a general consultation on how the year 2 of the annual plan is going to vary against the long-term plan. So all the items come together. You are given all the detail so that can support your decision making. The conversation that we have with the community is at a general level. What is the changes to operational expenditure, capital? What does that mean for your rates? What does it mean for the council's debt? This is different to what we said we thought year 2 of the long-term plan was going to look like. Community, what do you think about that? In addition, as we've discussed and as this paper details, there are a number of items that we are consulting on alongside this annual plan. One of those we've just discussed is fees and charges. The other items are the water service delivery options and the urban play options. So this paper speaks to those specifically. And in the public excluded paper that you've referenced, Chair, there is an option there for Council to give me direction on whether you wish to seek further advice on another matter as well. So that's just background in terms of the consultation process and what the annual plan process is. So resolutions 2, 3, 4, 5 and 6 relate to some of that background in terms of what the opening position was and what variances are looking like across those different categories that the report discusses. So the Resolution 2 speaks to the forecast rate increase for year 2, which was 8.5%, and noting that that is after 2.43% of rate smoothing. Resolution 3 relates to the variances to the long-term plan as a result of economic environment changes. So that's to do with our inflation assumptions, insurance costs, which has been spoken about at the Risk and Assurance Committee, interest rate changes, and other adjustments relating to the economic environment. Resolution 4 speaks to the variances to the long-term plan as a result of regulatory changes. So as you'll be aware, most of those relate to the Affordable Water Reform Programme. Resolution 5 speaks to the one item that doesn't relate to that, which is to do with government legislative direction on mayoral and councillor salaries, which council is required to implement. Resolution 6 speaks to the item of ring fencing, which we are required to do for the Affordable Water Reform Programme, and it summarises the position before any further mitigations of a 24.05 rates increase for 3 waters items and 9.63% for non-waters items, and that is a combined rates increase of 14.63% before any mitigations. So just to clarify again, that is as a result of all the changes in the economic and regulatory environment, only before any decisions that you as councillors make to adjust those. So happy to take any questions on any of those items.
There being no hands up at this stage, I'll move all those 6 for you, Rhiannon. And then it's probably best that we go through each heading as you've got further on and take the first one as a bit of a given that we note what you're saying about 3 waters or non-3 waters. And then when you ask us to agree or disagree, we'll do them individually. I think that'd be an easy way to work our way through. Oh, sorry, Grant.
Yeah, so just to get some clarity, so the 14.63 is what we're looking at a rates increase if we make no mitigations.
Correct.
Yep. Tom.
Chair, I'm just trying to understand what we are being asked to approve at this stage. I mean, when you get to the point of moving 1 to 6, embedded in 6 is the average, including 3 waters, increase of, gosh, what is it? No, it's not. It's just including the. So there's nothing in 1 to 6 which ties us to particular. I mean, I'm concerned. I mean, I don't support this.
Yeah.
Right? But I don't know how not to support it. Is really my question.
Well, I guess
because it's not a matter of working through the agree and disagree. Because even if we agree with all of them, we still come up with a number which is unacceptable. Right? So how do we work through this paper without coming to the other end of finding that we've approved a particular. The sum of what we've approved actually adds up to an overall rate increase that I don't support.
So I guess I've already alluded to that. So use me as the guinea pig, I guess. I don't agree with a 9.5% rate increase. I don't think there's any tolerance in the community for that. There's a significant amount of hurt in some sectors of our community for that sort of level, which followed 9.8 last year as well. And but I'll let the democratic process go. I'll be vocal during the consultation process to convince people that if they're not happy with 9.5 and want it to be closer to 3.9, which is the local government inflation index, which the staff have advised us of, then they need to be very vocal. Coming to us after we strike the rate, or coming to us after the next election and saying, I'm really hacked off my rate increase, is too late. You can't sit in a silent majority and then expect to have a voice afterwards. So people need to do it. As councillors, I think we have an obligation to put in front of them some other facts that are not presented in these reports, and I will certainly be doing that around employee costs. Does that answer your question, Tom?
Yeah, my question, I mean, you're going to lead us through it, Chair. My question is, how do we avoid agreeing to a particular that binds us into the whole thing? I don't think there's anywhere in this that asks us to approve a particular outcome
Yep.
in terms of, we're being asked to approve individual items. Having approved those individual items, we come to a point where by inference, we've agreed the outcome.
Correct. So,
Right,
well,
and I don't agree that, so my question is, how do you avoid that? I could simply vote against everything that comes
Yep.
through here.
and that's exactly what I did at the beginning of the session, to say that I don't want to be party to a process that ends up at the end of today in recommending to the public, by way of consultation, of a 9.5% rate increase, because that's where we're heading. And so I just think I can't avoid that. There are some of the things in here in the list that Rhiannon's thrown up that I do actually agree with, and there's some that I don't. But I don't want to be part of a process that ends up with 9.5, because I think we're missing some parts of the equation we should be looking at. So, don't know where you end up with all that. Patricia.
Ticking time
Oh,
bomb, isn't
sorry.
it?
Now, just to respond to Deputy Mayor's question.
Yep.
When we get to resolution 24? 24, we will need to break to go into public excluded. That will allow councillors to see with the impact of the public excluded decisions and options that are available, that we will be able to provide you a number then. And that will be what the number, before we come back into public to get the rest of the decisions, then you will know the number that comes out of that decision. Whether, if you've declined some aspects, that will be mitigations, or if you've approved savings proposed by staff.
But it's reasonable to assume, if we agree to everything that's in this paper, we will end up with 9.5. If we refute some of the mitigation, we'll be somewhere between 9.5 and 14.63.
I'm just looking at Jamie as to what
Surely.
non,
Yep, he's nodding, I got that. Yep.
depending on what's the group.
Yep.
We've got a range.
So our best result, if you consider what I said before about ratepayers, our best result is 9.5, and our worst result is somewhere between 9.5 and 14.63.
For those that have three waters. For those ratepayers that do not receive three waters services from us, their rate increase will be significantly lower.
Yep.
So just to remember that there is
Yep.
large parts of the city and many ratepayers that don't receive three waters, or receive one of the waters or two, but not all three.
So I think I've already previously commented on this, so I don't want to get drawn into it, but a vast majority of ratepayers in the city are on three waters, vast majority. And if it's lower than 90%, I'd be really surprised. So those majority are still going to be hitting somewhere between 9.5 and 14.63. So that answers your question, Tom. How do we get it lower than 9.3? And the only way I see, the only mechanisms available to us, and I hate to say this, is it's election year and we have a public consultation process. And I think councillors, being mindful that I'm not standing, would be very careful on what they vote for when it comes to a rate increase.
That's an unfair comment.
Yeah.
Well,
that is.
that's a fact of life.
No, that's
We
your
can't be
opinion.
scared into not making
Well, that's
a
all right. You
decision.
feel comfortable with it, you feel comfortable with it.
It's almost
That's not
point
how
of
things
order
work.
territory.
Yeah, well.
I mean, this is not a political matter. This is about how much additional we look to get from
Yep.
I agree,
ratepayers.
but the mayor just
Nothing
made
to
it
do with
political.
nothing to do with the politics of it.
Well,
The reason
then
I'm
why were
arguing
they
this
just
is
raised?
because I don't believe that people can afford an additional nearly 10% extra on their rates. That's the reason I'm arguing this. But I don't understand.
Sorry, point of order. Can we continue with the meeting?
Yeah, fair enough. Okay.
Yep, thank
That's
you,
what we're here
Leslie.
for. Sorry. I might have got that wrong.
No, it's fine. Leslie?
Thank you. To try and move on to the actual substance, the 1 to 6 recommendations that you have moved, which the Deputy Mayor was questioning, does this somehow bind us into something? Can I just point out that 1 to 6 is receiving a report and noting 5 other issues, including the fact that central government decisions and regulations have thrust us into a position, particularly on Three Waters, but also on the question of the mayoral and councillor salaries of the future, that we can do nothing about. So we have, in 1 to 6, we have a receipt of a report, we have 5 notings of items that are quite straightforward. They're notings of items. We can then move on to the next part, the next pages. So it seems to me that you've moved 1 to 6.
Is there a seconder?
Happy to second it to move this issue on past this point, or otherwise we're going to spend a great deal of time going around in circles.
Got that?
When it is not actually anything to do with 1 to 6.
Rangy.
Look, this is all about democracy, so I'm going to state an opinion that I'm a bit confused by the Mayor's stance here. I mean, coming across as Captain Austerity, yet if I go back to August last year at the National Tourism Conference at the Ascot, you're standing up in front of a crowd saying that Invercargill is building the flashiest museum in New Zealand. Now, how can you say that in August last year and sit here and look to slash and burn everything that we try and do to run this city? I'm just making a statement, and I'm perplexed, and I just wanted to and I just had to say that. Thank you.
Thank you. And so that you don't continue to be perplexed, the museum was authorised by the ratepayers after significant consultation, and there's nothing wrong with being proud about it, but we also have to listen to what the ratepayers are telling us about the projected rate increase. Steve.
Oh, yeah, thanks, Chair. I agree with Leslie around what we can move here, but I guess I'm feeling so snookered just around the narrative that's being created, and I mean this with respect, Mayor, is that you are saying in our meeting that you will be going to the media at pace publicly at 3.9 and nothing more, right?
Correct.
I'm struggling to work with this paper now because I don't want 9.5, 9.6 either. But I guess I'm looking for solutions to the very real problem we have in front of us, and I'm just feeling awful about this paper because the conversation around it is causing me to feel snookered in my ability to actually make decisions around the realities from getting from 9.5 down to 3.9. It's fine to make the statement. I guess I'm struggling with the solution.
And the paper I gave you the solutions of how to get there. Not everybody will agree with those, and I haven't presented it to staff, but hey, at the end of the day, we'll find what we find. Okay, we've got on the table recommendations 1 through 6. Leslie, you seconded those. Any opposition? Oh, sorry, all those in favour?
Aye.
Any opposed? Carried. Moving on, I'll move 7 as well, which again is just a noting one of the changes.
Seconded.
Yep, seconded. All those in favour?
Aye.
Carried. Now we have to work through agree, disagree for the next 3. So number 8 says to rephrase Three Waters capital program as outlined. A mover and a seconder for that.
I'll move agrees for 8, 9 and 10.
Yeah, I prefer to do them individually because I'd like to have some discussion about 9, but
Move agrees to 8.
8. Seconded by Trish. All those in favour to agree?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Given that I have a blank opposal. Number 9, agrees and disagree. Just before you move that motion, Leslie.
I'll move to agree.
Yeah, thank you. Just a comment to that. One of the issues I struggle a little bit with number 9 is that we had the DIA recently advise us that from a Three Waters perspective, we were in the top 10% of councils in the country. We have low debt in relation to the Three Waters. We've upgraded our pumping plant at Branksholme and the major arterial routes into the city from that, and our leakage is, if not the best in the country, it's very close to it. So the national average for leaking of pipes is 30%. Wellington's got 50 and we are 17.17. That all signals to me that we have a network that works reasonably well. And so bringing that depreciation forward a couple of years, which is what we're doing by number 9, does put some significant cost of having to have the depreciation on the freshwater at 100%, when previously we were phasing in over, I think, 2 or 3 years. So that makes me a little bit nervous. So I have Leslie as a mover for agrees, a seconder. Rangi, seconded. All those in favour?
Oh, there's a talk. What?
Sorry?
Sorry, I have my hand up.
Oh, sorry, to talk, yes, certainly.
Look, I would take the advice, and I imagine these figures of 90, 90 and 100 have been put forward by our water engineers. Now,
No.
regardless of what you have stated about the DIA said we're so wonderful, we will not continue to be so wonderful if we do not implement this. That this is the way forward. And if we start trying to do a makeshift interim 2 or 3 years and believe that we can suddenly get out of it, I totally disagree with that. Those figures up there are necessary. So that's why we need them.
Well, I just need to clarify that. In the previous plans we have, and Michael can correct me, or Patricia can correct me, we had 80, 80 and 90 as the figures in the long-term plan. We've moved that forward because we believe that the criteria for the new local water done well requires us to move up quicker to 100%. All I'm signalling is that creates a huge cost to us, and logic would tell me that if you had 90% depreciation on fresh water, that the only risk we have is if the whole network, the absolute whole network, was damaged in one foul swoop. Then you wouldn't have enough depreciation to cover repairing all 100%. So this is a risk that goes decades out from where we are now, probably 30, 40, 50 years out. Tom?
Well, as you say, Mr. Mayor, we believed when we settled the long-term plan, which was 9 months ago or something like that, that to work to depreciation rates of 80, 80 and 90 was sufficient to maintain the system. Do we now have evidence that the system has got worse to the extent that we now need to go to 90, 90, 100?
Yep.
Is there any evidence to that effect? Like you said, looking for the general manager in that area?
Well, it's my understanding, Michael, that's not, Tom, that's not driven by water engineers. It's driven by central government.
I was responding to the very good point that Councillor Pottinger made, that is, if this is something that's believed by the water engineers, then it's inappropriate for us to change it. But my understanding is that that is not actually the reason it has gone to 90, 90, 100, and therefore I think that it is appropriate for us to consider it.
Yep.
And I agree with the point that you made, that we should revert to the LTP number.
Sure. Michael?
Through yourself, Chair, I'd just like to highlight this is another regulatory or legislative change that's coming up in relation to Three Waters. You will be required to fund at 100% of depreciation. What I would highlight is what that depreciation might be is still something that is being worked through from a requirement coming through in the regulation. So that should come through as we go through the consultation period. So we'll have a more definitive period when we get through to the finalisation of that. But we need to signal that we would be heading towards 100% by the time we get to the regulatory coming in, which is in another year's time. If you weren't to do it in this time round and left them at the 80, 80, 90, that would be a significant increase going into the next period of 26, 27. We're signalling that that's not palatable from a ratepayer's perspective either. That's why we're indicating to go this way. But I do highlight that there are potential changes coming through in legislation that are happening kind of as we speak, that we need to be aware of as well, and we are still watching that space. It will be something I believe will change between draft and final in relation to the consultation period. that is something that will get updated. I do not know which way it will go at this particular point.
Okay. Grant, did you?
Yeah, so I was just trying to clarify, but I think I have. So if we disagree with that, we default back to the 80, 80, 90. Is that what the default position is?
So the LTP for year 2 was actually 80, 80, 100.
Yeah.
So
Right.
water
So
supply was
which-
always going to raise to 100. We had planned to do it over 3 or 4 years. We need to, what we're saying is the legislation, it looks like we will have to do that much quicker.
Sooner.
Okay.
So we're taking a vote.
So Leslie, a mover for agree.
So the reason I have moved it this way is because I agree with the opinion that the staff have put on the table, and if they hadn't, I was going to ask that the
Yep.
statement be made. It is quite clear where the central government direction is heading. It's towards 100 for everything. It is quite clear that if we leave that at 80, 80 and 100 now,
90.
then we are merely making a very large increase in the following year that is unpalatable. It is quite clear that we're going to be headed in this direction. To me, it's entirely sensible that we take this decision now.
Okay.
I emphasise that we are actually forced into this by central government decisions on 3 waters.
Okay.
And those listening on live stream need to be very clear on that. But the fact is, we are being forced into it.
Okay. Seconder. Barry, all those in favour?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Tom, recorded? Yeah, I'm already opposed anyway, so that's 2 of us. Number 10,
I'll move as agreed. The long-term plan smoothing is something that I think we have discussed very fully at workshops as being a very sensible and obvious policy decision we made early, and there is no reason why we would not continue with it.
a seconder? Yeah, thank you, Darren. I can't believe that you didn't pick up the typo in there, Leslie, but it's okay. It says 2025/202.
It's quite
Very,
okay.
very rarely I ever get one past you on that one. So that should read 26, yeah. All those in favour?
Aye.
A comment.
Oh, sorry, yes, comment, Rangi, sorry.
Look, I'd just like to hear from the staff, whoever wants to do it, just about rate smoothing versus actually facing the Southern Alps version of the LTP with rates versus paying as you do the work. Now, to me, from my limited knowledge of maths, I thought, well, if you smooth something like that, you will end up paying more in the long run. It just has to be. You cannot put stuff off and then hope that it's going to be the same as if you just did each year as we prospected. Now, I just want to comment on that. I may be completely off track, but is there any staff member here who can maybe give us the actual monetary details between rate smoothing and not smoothing it?
Michael.
Long run?
Michael's just put his hand up for that.
I thought Patricia did.
No, oh, wait.
I was pointing to my CFO.
Oh,
I'm
sorry.
happy to cover it live if you
Yep,
want.
either or.
Michael
Ask
can
Patricia.
always jump in. So, yes, you're correct, councillor Pottinger. It does actually defer income, and for council in the general rates area, we actually deferred income to stop the increased rates, which would mean we'd be very high up front and very low towards the end of the LTP, which meant we deferred income that has a cost. Water, as it has turned out, they needed to be lower and then they would go high, so we're actually bringing it forward. This is actually an addition, this smoothing, so it's taking what we're actually starting to rate now for the peaks expected in the latter years of the LTP, where the big capital projects in the waters area comes in. We're actually taking that earlier so that it doesn't go from a lowish number, though 20 is not particularly low, to going much, much higher very quickly.
So it's a double smoothing. you're increasing and you're decreasing.
Yeah.
And so it's super smooth.
It's less variable.
Right. Thank you.
Okay,
I didn't realise about the,
yeah, that's
about the
fine.
increase, but thank you.
Thank you for that clarity. So we got to the stage, I think, that everybody was approved. Was anybody opposed to that item 10? No, that's unanimous, thank you. Number 11 is just a straightforward note, so if somebody'd like to move that, as is 12.
Just to interrupt you there, Mayor, I think we should actually go into public excluded at this point because item 12 relates to something that's in the public excluded paper. So if we were to discuss the items in public excluded, we could then come back to discuss the rest of the items through the non-Three Waters area, having already made the decisions in public excluded.
Happy to move 11.
Yeah, we'll put that first. Second for 11. Barry, all those in favour?
Aye.
Carried. In relation to 12, Patricia, I think it's reasonable to assume that the advice you've given in PE will be accepted by, I guess, a majority of councillors. And again, this is not a decision-making process.
Public excluded and then come back. It would allow us at the end of that for us to tell you what the final rates is looking like as a result. Because we are modelling as we go through each of these decisions.
I'm comfortable to move that we go into public excluded if it will help to forward the conversations we are
Welcome,
having.
Alex. A seconder for that. Trish, all those in favour?
Aye.
I'm actually opposed, as I said at the beginning of the session,
I'm opposed.
and Tom's opposed as well, that we shouldn't be discussing organisational efficiencies in PE. But I'll go with the majority on that. So we'd like to go off live stream for a few minutes while we discuss the paper that's sitting in PE.